Many HTML elements have their lengths and sizes precised using the CSS measurement units. You may have come across the pixel and percentage measurement units, and there exist other measurement units such as the EM, the REM, the VH, and VW. So you'll be wondering why all these measurement units? What's the difference between them? And when should I use one over the other? Well, I've got all that demystified in this tutorial. The length and size of each elements have measurement units. We use measurement units on HTML elements, on their width, height, margins, paddings, and even font sizes. So many of these properties of HTML elements actually have measurement units. You have heard of the measurement units, the pixels, the EM, REM, percentage, VH, and VW. And in this tutorial, we are going to be learning about them. So as we mentioned, we apply measurement units on the CSS properties. So when you give the value of an HTML property, it has one of these measurement units attached to it. So for example, we can have a paragraph. Like if you come to our style, you'll see the style HTML element. We can have a paragraph, and this paragraph can have a width, and we can give this width a value of 100 pixels. We can as well have a height, and this height can have a value of, let's say, 20%. Then we can have a font size. See font size, and this property can have a value of 2 EM. So these are measurement units that we're applying to this HTML element, this PHTML element. So I have this pixels, which is a measurement unit. You have percentage after this value, which is another measurement unit, and we have EM. So in this tutorial, we're going to be learning about these different measurement units, and we'll see that these measurement units can be applied to some different properties. We'll see when to use them. We're also going to look at the VH and VW in addition to these other measurement units. So you bear with me, though there is no PHTML element in our HTML code here, we're just applying these properties. I just get these properties to show you the different measurement units we have available. So the first thing you need to take note of is the fact that there are two main types of measurement units, two main categories. So you have absolute measurement units and you have relative measurement units. So absolute measurement units are going to always stay the same, depending and they depend on nothing actually. So measurement units which are absolute, the main measurement unit which is an absolute measurement unit is the pixel measurement unit. So the pixel measurement unit is always going to stay the same. So the value is never going to change. If you give something an HTML element like this paragraph a width of 20%, of 100 pixels, it's always going to stay 100 pixels, irrespective of the size of the browser, the device, and it's the same if you apply this pixel measurement unit to the padding of an element or the height. It's always going to be that fixed value of the pixels you have given it, and we are going to take a look at that. Let's go ahead and select this paragraph. In this case, let's just give it a width of, let's say, 200 pixels. Let's remove this height and font size so that I explain clearly what we're working in this case only with pixels. Let me just give it a background color. Let's just give it a background color of this. No problem. Let's just take this violet, blue violet, no problem. So let's now create the paragraph here. I'm going to take away this heading. I'm going to create a paragraph. So we'll just say this is the paragraph. So we observe now that we have a paragraph here in our browser, and this paragraph has a width of 200 pixels. And as I mentioned, it's an absolute width, means it's never going to change. Notice the width of our browser here is small. If we increase the width of this browser, this paragraph never changes. The width of this paragraph stays 200 pixels, irrespective of the size of our browser. And it's going to behave the same for anything. Means if you give this paragraph, for example, a padding of, let's say padding of let me just say 20 pixels. Notice that we have a padding of 20 pixels around this paragraph. And if we change the width of our browser, increase it, it stays the same. So any HTML element is not always going to be a P element, and each element, an anchor element, buttons, all elements, HTML elements, once you specify a property giving them a pixel value, that value is absolute, so it never changes. It's always going to be the same. So with that, you see that you are going to use pixels only in situations where you are clear on the exact value you want to give an HTML element. And you see that it's not the best for responsiveness, because when you're working with responsive sites, you want values that can respond to the width of the browser and to different things on the browser. So pixels are not the best for responsiveness. The next type of measurement unit is the relative measurement unit. So relative measurement units is a category of measurement units which are actually, as the name indicates, relative. Means these ones can change conditionally based on different values, such as the width of the browser changing, or the element an element is found in. So relative measurement units, we are going to look at the examples of the EMs, as we saw, the EM, the REM, percentages, VH, and VW. So all these ones are relative measurement units. So their value is going to depend on some other value. For example, the EM measurement unit is relative to the value of its parent element. So what do I mean by that? If a paragraph is inside a container div, and let me just simulate what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to put this paragraph now inside a container div, because we're talking of relative here. In this case, the EM is relative to its parent element. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this inside a container div. So I'm going to put this paragraph inside container div. And so what I'm explaining now is, if a paragraph is inside a container div, and that container div is actually given a font size. So this container div has a font size. The paragraph's font size is going to be relative to that of the container div if you use the EM. So for example, let's say we're going to select now let's leave the paragraph in this case, and I'm going to select the container div. So as dot container. So we'll select this container div, and let's say we'll give it a font size. Let's just give it a font size of, let's say, 20 pixels. 20 pixels. Yeah, no problem. Font size of, let's just say, 20 pixels. Okay, so what happens is the paragraph, in this case, we're working only with the font size, and that's one thing you'll notice with the EM measurement unit. So I'm going to give this paragraph a font size. You use the EM measurement, most of the times you are going to be using it with font sizes to style properties of an element that you want them to look relative, as small width. When you're working with small width, like font sizes and maybe width of an element that you want them to look like the size of a font. And we're going to see examples. So let's say in this case we give it a font size of, let's just say, 2 EM. Okay, so let me explain what's happening here. We have this paragraph in this case, which is inside this div container. So actually this paragraph is the child of this div container. So when you give the font size of the paragraph to be 2 EM, what you are saying is, make this paragraph to be 2 times the font size of this paragraph should be 2 times the font of its parent element. So actually what we have here now is a paragraph with a font size of 40 pixels, because here we're multiplying 2 by 20, making it 40 pixels. And you'll notice that if I change this to TV, for example, we have a larger font size, and this one is actually TV times 20, which is 60 pixels in this case. So you can have values which are also less than 1, for example 0.5, and in this case we are saying make this font size to be half of the parent font size. So it's 0.5 times 20, which is 10 pixels. So that's actually what EM is used for, and in most cases em is, since that is scalable, it means you can actually change the font of an element relative to a parent element. So you can have a div and maybe you have some text inside or some other div inside, and maybe you don't want to care about the initial value of this div, but you just want that its child should have some value that is maybe similar to this one. So you can use one em as well, and one em is just going to say give this text inside here the same font size as its parent element, because here I'm multiplying 1 by 20. So basically you don't care about the exact value of this font size here. You are just giving a value relative to that of its parent, so you don't need to know the exact pixel equivalence of the font size here. And you can also apply this to padding margin. So for example, if you give this guy a background color of, let's just say that blue violet. So give it a background color of blue violet. I want to give it a padding. So you can see give a padding of 1 em. So you can give now a padding of 1 em, and here we are just saying that give a padding which is equal to the font size of the parent element. So basically we are saying give 20 pixels around this paragraph. So if you give here 1 em, a padding of 1 em, we are giving 20 pixels around this paragraph, and that's relative to the parent element because we are using em here in this case. So you can give it to the height of an element width, an element height, padding margin, and font size can work in this case with em as well. So a good use case of the em is a case where, let's say maybe you want to have an icon to the left of this text, and you want the icon and the text to be of the same height. But in this case, you don't know the exact height of the element. A hint is that here, you know that 1 em means the same size as the parent font size. So means if we create, let's just say we create a div that we are going to style to be like a rectangle, a square box before this paragraph. And before that, I can take away, let me just make the browser a bit bigger. And what you notice is that the padding is actually, I'm going to take away this padding so that it does not scale. I'm going to take away this background color. So we want to have the icon before this paragraph. So I'm just going to create a div here, give it a class of icon, div.icon. So we have this div here, and we want to style this div to have the same height as the text. So now the text in this case, in this paragraph, is 1 em, and it's actually 1 em. The div in this case, the paragraph in this case has a font size of 1 em. 1 em meaning the same font size as its parent element. Means we can apply the height and width of this div icon. If we give it a width and height of 1 em, we are basically giving it the same size as this paragraph, because both of them are going to have 1 em, which is actually the dimensions of the parent element, of the font size of the parent element. So I can come in here and I can select the icon, and I give it a width of 1 em and a height as well of 1 em, and a height as well of 1 em. Then I'm going to give you a background color so that it's visible. Background color of, let's just say, blue violet. So in this case, it's actually the same dimension, but it's not on the same line. So I'm just going to throw them into a flex box, just so that but I'm just going to make this container a flex box so that both of them are on the same line, so that I actually see that are of the same dimension. So I'm just going to give this container a display of flex. And I'm just going to justify the content to be center, and justify content center, and align items center. Boom, that's just align item center. So you notice now that this paragraph and this box are actually of the same dimensions in this case. So you have an icon before the paragraph. Let's come to our HTML. We have our paragraph and we have an icon, and I'm able to make the icon to be of the same size as the paragraph because both of them are in the same container. if I give the icons dimensions to be 1 em, I'm basically saying the width should be the same as the font size of the parent, the height should be the same as the font size of the parent, and the paragraph has a font size which is the same as that of the parent. So it permits me to get this, and you see that it's very easy to achieve that using the relative measurement unit, the EM. So that's basically it for the EM relative measurement unit. The next measurement unit we are going to be taking a look at is the REM measurement unit. This one is also relative, but instead of the REM being relative to the parent element as we have seen with the EM, REM is instead relative to the root element. The root HTML element has a default font size of 16 pixels. And let me just explain that with a simple example. I'm going to start first of all with a simple paragraph. So we have our paragraph in this case, and let me take away all this styling we have here. So we have a paragraph. I want to use the REM measurement unit, so I'm going to put here P, and we're going to give it a font size as well. Notice that EM and REM are fond of being used with font size and font size related values, like we saw with the box which I wanted to make the same size of the font. See that it's EM to do that. It's easy to do that with the EM. So in this case, the font size, let's just give the paragraph a font size of 2 rem. I'm going to explain what's happening here. So we're giving a font size to the paragraph of 2 rem. What does this 2 rem mean? This 2 rem means give this paragraph a font size of 2 times the root font size, because this arrow stands for root. The root font size is by default 16 pixels on normal web browsers. 16 pixels is the default root font size. So we're saying here that give this paragraph a value of 2 times 16, which is 32 pixels. So we're giving this paragraph a value of 32 pixels. We can as well say TV rems, and it's going to be TV times 16 pixels. See that the font size increases here, as well as we can use values such as 0.5, 0.2, 0.5 in this case is going to be half of 16, which is going to be 8 pixels. So here we are saying give this paragraph a value of 8 pixels. And the good thing with the REM is that REM is pretty standard. Means with the REM, you don't need to care about the parent font size. You know that you have an initial base font size in this case, which is 16 pixels for most web browsers. And you can just apply that to any text. Means, for example, we can have our website in which maybe we have an H1, which we are going to say is the heading of the website. And this is a pretty good use case. We can have an H2, which is, you can just say subheading. I don't surely probably join that, no problem. Then we can have some paragraph text here. Paragraph text. So let's just say lorem. Let's just say lorem 20 to have some sample lorem text. So in this case, you see we have a paragraph, we have a heading 1, a heading 2, and a paragraph. And with the REM measurement, you can easily specify different values which are going to make sense for your website and are going to be standard across the different pages. And what do I mean by that? Since, as we know, the root font size is 16 pixels, we can give the initial heading a larger font size by just saying, for example, we can say all H1s on our website should have a font size of, let's say, TV times the root font size. So I'm going to say give the font size of all H1s to be TV rem. So in this case, we are saying the font size of H1 should be TV times 16. That's why we have the H1s like this. We can say all H2 should have now a font size of 2 times 16. So we are going to give them a smaller font size, 2 times 16, which is 2 rems. And we can give the paragraphs, all paragraphs in this case, we can give them a font size of let's just say 1 rem. So we are giving them actually 1 times 16, which is still 16 pixels. So you see that your website is pretty standard, and anytime you want to modify the values for the different, you can just come in here and change the value. You can change to 1.5, and all your paragraphs in your HTML are just going to change to 1.5 times 16, which is the default font size for the HTML element. So I think the idea is pretty clear in this case. The REM is actually relative to the root font size, which is 16. So you can apply these multiplication factors to different HTML elements, knowing that it's going to be multiplied by 16 to get the exact value for the different properties. So another measurement unit which is probably the most used of all is the percentage measurement unit. So the percentage measurement unit is also a relative measurement unit, as we saw for the EM and the REM. But the percentage measurement unit is actually very flexible than the others. And we are going to see the percentage measurement unit being used in most cases for when you are working with the width of an element, the height, the margin, padding. And unlike the EM and REM, which we saw in most cases were being used for font sizes and font related values, in this case we are going to be using the percentage for things which are more, you are talking of the responsiveness of your website in this case. So when you resize the browser, you want maybe a paragraph to get a value which is relative to its parent value, and that's actually what the percentage measurement unit does. Let's take a quick example of how the percentage measurement unit can be applied to a simple. So in this case, we are going to have a paragraph inside a div container, just to show how that responsiveness works. And so we are going to create a div container, in this case div.container, and I'm going to create a paragraph in it, the paragraph, and just give it some lorem. Let's just say 5. Let's just say 7, lorem 7. So we'll have some sample text inside this paragraph. And what we are going to do is, we mentioned earlier that the percentage measurement unit is relative to the parent element. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select the paragraph here, and I'm going to give it a width of, let's just say 50%. So what does this mean? Actually, what I'm trying to say here is give this paragraph half of the width of its parent element. See that in this case, the paragraph. So to make things clear, I'm going to give this div container a background color, so that you see that this div container is actually spanning the whole width of the browser. So I'm just going to give this div container, first of all, div.container. So I'm just going to say .container. I'm going to give you a background color. So let's just say background color of, no problem, blue violet. So you see that what you notice that this div container, which contains this paragraph, normally spans the, we can say almost the whole width of the browser from here to here. And when we give now the paragraph which is inside this div container a width of 50%, what we are saying is you paragraph take up 50%, which is half of the width of this div container. So that's why the paragraph actually starts here and ends here. And to demonstrate that, I can give this paragraph its own background color, so that you see where the paragraph actually ends. What is happening? Background color. I'm going to give you a background color of, let's just say brown. So you see that the paragraph is clearly occupying 50%, as we specified here, of this div container, which ends here. And to demonstrate that, if we change, and to understand that this is actually responsive, you notice that if we change the width of the browser, irrespective of how the browser changes, this div container is always going to be 100% of the browser, because it's a block level element. And the paragraph which is inside it, we have set in our CSS that this paragraph should be 50% of its main container, which is this div container, which is violet. So this paragraph which is brown inside here is going to be always 50%, irrespective of the size of the browser. So that's how the percentage measurement unit is actually being used, and that's how you work with the responsiveness of your website. And by that, what do I mean? You can always define different proportions. Means it must not be 50%. You can say, okay, maybe you want to have a container to the left and maybe another container to the right of this paragraph, and you want maybe that to the left to contain much text, and maybe that at the right just some small image. So you can give this guy a higher width of, let's say, 70%, so that it occupies more space, and that's where you are going to put maybe your text and your image. Let me just give this container a height of, let me just give it a fixed height in this case. Let me just say a height of, and one thing I'm also forgetting is this width property can be applied to the height of this container as well. So it must not be only the width as we are saying. So if you give it a height, for example, let me go ahead and give this guy a height. Let me give this guy a height for what I want to demonstrate initially. So I'm going to give this man a height of let me just see 400 pixels. And bon, so okay, this is where things get interesting. Yeah, this is where things actually get interesting, because we now have the parent container having this height of 400 pixels, and we have a child container in it, which is this our brown paragraph we have here. And maybe you want this paragraph to extend. Let's say maybe we want it to fill this parent element completely. One way someone is going to do it is he may come to this paragraph and say, okay, I know that the height of my container is 400 pixels, so I'm going to give this guy a height also of 400 pixels. But yeah, you are fixing the height. It means if you ever change the height of your parent container in the future, you are going to need to come and change the height of the paragraph as well, so that the paragraph is also for, like, let's say for example, if you change it now here to 500 pixels, and you'll be forced to come here and change it to 500 pixels as well, so that the child occupies is the same height as the parent container. But with percentages, it's very easy to do that, and you need to do the modification all in one place. How does that happen? You just need to specify that the height of the child should be 100%. And by that, what you are saying is the child should always occupy the full space of the parent, the full height of the parent. So anytime you change the height of the parent, you don't need to come and modify this 100, because this 100 just means one fill the height of the parent. So if I change this man to 300 pixels, the child is still 100% of that 300 pixels, which is the full height. And so there you actually see that working with percentages is actually very good. Any child you have in a parent, you can always change the width, height, padding, margin with respect to the size of the parent, the other values the parent has. And that's actually very useful for responsiveness in websites. So the last two measurement units we are going to be taking a look at are the VH and VW measurement units. These measurement units are also relative measurement units, and these ones are very easy to understand, because VH is with respect to the viewport height, which is the height of your browser, while VW is with respect to the viewport width. So VW is going to be with respect to the viewport width, while VH is with respect to the viewport height. So let's take an example, and let's just say we have this paragraph. We are going to keep the same paragraph and just take away this div. So we have this paragraph, and I'm also going to leave the background color, because that's going to show you the extent where the paragraph ends. Take away the paragraph now here, and we want to explain the V. Let's start with the VW, no problem. So I'm going to take away this height and width properties also, so that let me just use that of the width. So instead of using percentage here, I'm going to say let the width of this paragraph be 50 VW, and let's see what that's going to look like. So I'm going to say 50 VW. So the width of the paragraph is 50 W, and if you look well, you see that this is half of the width of the browser. The browser width is from here to here. 50 VW says give this paragraph a width of 50% of the browser width. So 50 VW is 50% of the browser width, which is this horizontal space we have here. So we can change it to, let's say, make it 1/4, and we're going to be giving it for 25 VW, which is 1/4 in this case. And if we give 100 VW, 100 VW is going to be 100% of the width of the browser. So you see that it fills the whole width of the browser. That's also fully responsive, because if we change the browser width, if we increase the browser width, you notice that it's always going to be that 100% of the browser width, which is the 100 VW. So these are relative measurement units. So relative, they are going to always scale because they are relative. We can also take a look at the other one, which is VH. And if I give this paragraph a value of 100 VH, it's going to take up the full height of the browser. So if I say give this guy a height of 100 VH, so you see that it actually takes up the height of the browser, but it does not fill up the space here, but if you measure the length of this, you notice that I can scroll here horizontally. So this small additional space when you scroll, small additional height when you scroll, is going to compensate for this small space which is up here. And this space that is up here is due to the padding that the browser gives. So if we come here and say to every HTML element at the start, we say start, take away the initial, keep up the initial padding and margin for HTML elements, so that we can take away that space. Let's say padding 0 pixels, and same to the margin, 0 pixels for margin, 0 pixels. Yeah, you notice now that this is actually completely the full height of the browser, 100 VH. We can change to 50 VH as well, so that is 50. It's actually 50. It's actually half of the browser height. So you notice that this 50 VH is half of the browser height. 100 VW is now. So when you are talking of VW, you are talking of the width as horizontally, while VH is the height vertically. And this one is, remember, relative to the browser. So you're actually looking at all these, not any parent element. You're looking at the whole browser. So when you increase the browser, you notice that width is still 100% horizontally and the height is half vertically. So in this case, we are talking of the browser. I can apply that to any element. So if you nest elements inside other elements with the hierarchy, the value you're applying is always going to be with respect to the browser. So it's not with respect to any parent element. And by that I mean, if you have, for example, a div container, let's see, now this can be more nesting, but I'm just going to take a simple example. And we have a paragraph with some text. Let me just say this is a paragraph. We have some paragraph with some text, and let's say we come here and let me first of all take away the initial content so that I see clearly what's happening. So let's say we decide that this container should have a width of 50%. So I'm going to select the container here. And let's say we say it should have a width. Let's say we say it should have a width of 50%. No, I'm using 50 VH, sorry, VW. So that's horizontal. And we give it a background color. Give it a background color of, let's just say blue, no problem. So you notice that this container, the container that contains the paragraph, so this paragraph is inside the container, but we are giving the container a width of 50 VW. So it's 50% of the viewport width, which is the width of the browser. If we come inside here and give this paragraph a width of, let's say 75 VW. 75 VW is always going to be 75 VW. Means in this case, it's not with respect to the parent container. If we give this paragraph a width of, let me first of all do that. I give it a width of 75 VW. And I give it a background color of, let's take a blue violet. So what you are noticing here is that the width of the paragraph is greater than that of, so it extends and goes out of, it actually goes out of the div container, which was 50% of the viewport width. And that's because, as I was saying, the VW is not with respect to the parent. It does not care about the parent element. In this case, it's with respect to the browser itself. So the browser width is always going to be that 75% of the browser width, and it's never going to care about the size of the parent element. So it's a good way when you want to work with width, heights, paddings, margins of an element with respect to the browser width, and you are not really caring about the parent container. So yeah, that's one way of working with VH and VW as well. And those are the last two relative measurement units and measurement units that we have to look at in this tutorial. So guys, that's it for this tutorial on different measurement units, and I will encourage you to go back and take a look at them. I think I've covered much material and try to explain in the best way I could. If you like this tutorial and you know you got some value from it, I would like you to consider hitting that like button and subscribe to this channel to get this kind of videos and to promote this channel. And I would like to see my next tutorials.